Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new series I'm putting together called Pubg Like a Pro, where we talk about the maps, we talk about callouts, and we talk about strategy along with some of the biggest brains inside of competitive Pubg. Speaking of those big brains, today I am joined by your current reigning PAS winner, Roth from SSG. How are things today?
It's going good, man. I can't really complain. Get to compete for a living, and I wouldn't have it any other way. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Excited to see what 2024 has ahead. Roth, how does that sound? How does it feel when you get introduced as a PAS champion, right? It's got to feel pretty good.
Actually, I feel like that's the first time that's happened. So that was a pretty cool feeling. You kind of forget. For me, it's PAS was awesome. I know our end goal is PGC and stuff like that. But to be able to actually win a regional for the first time, it's felt pretty cool.
And a lot of things have changed since the very first time we spoke, right? The very first time we spoke, you didn't have an org. I think you'd gone on, you missed the first international event because things didn't go pretty well for you guys.
Yeah.
You picked up a new roster, you got picked up by SSG. Since then, you've traveled the world, you've been to Saudi Arabia competing at PGS, and then recently you got to play in the top 16 in the world in PGC. So I gotta say, it's very impressive with how things have gone for you in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, the last year for me has been the best year of my life. It's been awesome. It started off with getting married to my wife, which was pretty cool. Nothing will ever top that, but damn, it tried. To be able to compete and win was pretty cool. It's a different feeling. It's not a better feeling before I die in my sleep, but yeah, nothing will beat, getting married to her, but being able to succeed in your career is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool feeling to finally get to that top, and nobody in our region was better than us in those couple of days, and that's pretty cool. But now it's on to 2024 and replicating that success and even succeeding, last year.
Do you think that it adds a little bit of pressure, the success you had to the end of last year, or do you think that puts you in the position where you want to be?
No, I mean, for me, I've been doing this for a long time. I don't think winning a regional, getting pressure is allowing people to pressure you, right? Like, it's allowing the outside noise to be like, oh, they have to live up to what this was. I don't care what other people think, and I have to live my life and know what I'm capable of, know what this team is capable of, and every day we have to strive to be better. And Gobang does a good job of reminding us and humbling us when we need to be humbled. And I don't really think that any outside noise will ever affect us.
Well, look, I think you guys have done an incredible job. I've said it before. I think it's really, really good year for you. I'm really happy for you that you've managed to successfully get married. She turned up. She turned up on the day, which is usually the most important thing, because I have a wedding coming up myself, and as I'm reminded, it's our day, but really it's their day. You and I, we both know that. But look, again, I'm very happy for you, and I think that it's got to be good for you too to know that your partner's fully behind you as well. She's in the PUBG scene, and a lot of people in the community know her, so it must be really nice to that she has your back for all this too, right?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure if you're even in the process of getting married, you guys have an amazing relationship and a connection. You don't just go down that road with just anyone. For me, she's been my big supporter. We've taken the back and forth in life. We've been together for 5 years. Well, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. It might have been 4, but we've had our ups and downs. I've supported her and lifted her up when she needed to, and she supported me and lifted me up, when she needs to, and that's important. And if you don't have that, you're never gonna get to that end goal. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. But we have each other's backs, like you said, and I'm so grateful for her.
It's really good to know that that's the way things are. But look, we've spoken a little bit about how the year's gone, but let's get stuck into what this series is all about. So what I said we were going to do was look at individual maps, talk about strategy, talk about plays, and today we're going to talk about what I'd like to call the bedrock of PUBG. This is Erangel, the first ever map that was released. Yes, it looks a little bit different than it did when we all started playing 7-8 years ago. But first off, to get us kicked off, Roth, what are your own personal thoughts about Erangel?
Obviously it's the cornerstone of PUBG, right? I mean, the game was built here. It's been remastered a few times, like you said, I think for the better. More access into melee, more access into different parts of the map that were really before way less manageable. But I'm not gonna say it's not my favorite map. It's okay. But it is, everyone likes to say because it's the first one that was made, it's their favorite map. But it is one of the most dynamic and equal maps. Like, for whatever it's worth, like it's one of the most fair maps to play on as a competitor. Like everyone has the knowledge of it, everyone has the info that they need, and there's not a lot of weird gimmicks and stuff going on. It's just straight up, what do you know and how do you do it?
And it's a map that I, as a caster, like, because I look as a caster, it's very different as a player. I like Erangel because it's, when I think of PUBG, it's the map that I think of. It's probably got a lot to do with the fact that so many historic moments have happened on this map as well, right? Like when you think about Tego Vikendi, we're only really on chapter 1 of those stories, so I think we'll get to know them a little bit more. But I think the big difference when you look at Erangel compared to Miramar, right, is probably how the map itself is set up and played. So yes, there's a lot of water, you've got that separate island to the south, but to me, Roth, it seems like a map that's very much compound based. Yes, there's a lot of nice playable terrain, but it seems like it was set up more for compound fighting.
I mean, I would agree too. It's hard because, obviously a lot of spots. A lot of your spots that are playable on Erangel are aside from the compounds themselves, they're ridges, dips, nooks and crannies that you have to also utilize vehicles to make successful. Which is why it feels very compound based. It takes a lot of that knowledge into understanding where I can put a UAZ, where I can put a Dacia, what can I do here, how can I line them up to make sure that I'm secured from this angle or this angle or this angle. Now, granted, like if you go up to Stalber now, lots of ridges, lots of things to play up in that area. Your Gaka fields, your like your North Observatory fields towards South George, like all those things, you need to know how to set up your cars and where exactly to find that nook and cranny to make that accessible. So it definitely does have it has probably an excess of compounds compared to some of the other maps. If you look at like the Tagos and the Vikendis, they need more compounds on those maps in different spots because there's too much open field. So yeah, it definitely is more compound based just because of the amount of compounds they've thrown into the map. I mean, do you remember when they announced one of the updates and when everyone looked into like, why are there so many compounds all over the place? Yeah, so that's where we're at now.
Like if you're playing this game long enough, you'll remember when the new ferry dock hadn't been added yet. That was between Sharkfin and, yeah, we're going to say it because this is on my channel. It's not between it and Ballsack. We'll talk about all these callouts a little bit later, but there's been so many little areas that have been added to and improved upon, and it just increases the playability of the map. And sometimes, Roth, it's even just adding shacks. Like they did that to Miramar about 2 years ago. They added a new type of shack, and it completely changed the way a lot of teams played some endgame scenarios. But is there any advice that you would give to people who want to get into comp or ranked players, people who play for fun, whenever we start off on Erangel on, looting advice, dropping advice, and just ways to play the game based on the clock?
Are you talking from like a competitive standpoint or from a... Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to play competitive PUBG and you're on Erangel specifically, because we'll stay there, you gotta just find your niche. Whether you're gonna be an edge team, whether you're gonna be a center team, right? You can look at teams like Sonics from Pochinki. They have, from Pochinki and from the central spot, they have a lot of direct avenues into the zone. They have a lot of direct, and they got to be quick. They leave very, very fast. And that's how you have to play that position. A team like LG from Milton Power, they have the luxury of looting a little bit longer at a very good loot spot that has really, really good loot, and playing slower into edges and kind of suffocating the teams around them when they come in with info, because that's what they're awarded by playing an edge. The contrary to that is like, you go to Zarky, you're not getting the loot that they're getting. So you need to find the balance of what you want. Do you want the loot with the ability to play an edge? Do you want to play an edge and probably have to move kind of quick because Zarky, you don't have any loot, so you can't really take those fights the way they can? Or do you want to be more of a central team that is kind of quicker to their stuff and understanding of the teams around them and the space they can control?
And I think that's one of the things that you'll find, that it's usually the most dominant teams in individual regions that take your Pachinkis, your Picados, your Terminals. You know, we've seen what happens at international events when you have all these teams that want to compete for the same place. I think anybody who's a fan of NA knows what happened with Sonics and 17 Gaming over the course of last year. And outside of that, there's always those decisions to make, right? So I want to talk about playing this map domestically versus playing it internationally, because you've had the opportunity of both. What are the big differences for you when we look at this map? And I'll actually bring it up for the viewers at home. What are the big differences on Erangel of competing in the Americas and then when you go to compete at Globals?
Well, every region is different. I would say, because I thought about this the other day when you talked to me about this, and you were going to ask me this question. Internationals to me are more of like an opens tournament or like an opens qualifier, because there's so many unknown variables, right? In your regional, if you look at the last couple regionals, it's the same teams for the most part. You have a couple, inner working teams, like teams that come in and out. You have some substitute teams, like there's a couple that don't make it through, right? But for the most part, I'm playing the same teams every day. You're playing the same teams every day in your regionals. You get familiar with tendencies. Like how does, like for me, when I used to play school apps back with BBB, the Keenan roster, well, we knew that we could follow Sonics wherever they wanted to go. We knew how they played, no matter what every circle was. We knew what they're going to do, so it's very easy to follow behind them, right? When you get to a international lobby and you now have 17 Gaming, and you can do all the studying in the world, but it's studying doesn't make the feel of the game different. You know, every game feels different. Everything, you have to feel the teams out in front of you. They play completely different. You can't do that, you know? So I think that from regionals, it's very structured. It's like a game of chess. And I feel like internationals is a game of checkers that someone just smacks the board and the checkers go flying everywhere. And you know, you could have a Chinese team or this full sending into you in the first 10 seconds of the game. You know, you watch some of the last couple internationals. There's a couple times I used to watch, like I think it was 4 a.m. one tournament. They're just full sending at the center. Because they felt that they were better at fighting than some people, and you know, that may have been winner chicken dinner, but still, you know, it's a little different. You're not as well prepared for internationals, because it's so hard to get 32 teams, understand their regions, how they play, and everyone tries to bring their identity into the international scene, right? And so now you have these differences of regions' identities meshing together, and it's almost like a nuclear bomb explodes on the lobby, because it's, what are you gonna do?
It's what I love about international play on a map like Erangel too is day one, the first map is usually really cagey and chaotic, and then day two things calm down. Then the final day, I don't know how you guys do it. Like when you get to these final days of international competitions where people are fighting, especially on the qualifiers for the final lobby, people are, you know, fighting and scratching and clawing tooth and nail to try and make their way through. Like, I think one of my big memories, and I think it's probably something that you'll never forget, was your final day of the LCQs for the PGC lobby, where it finished. It finished, was it just up around this section of the map? And what was it like for you? Because you guys, I think, got taken out between these two compounds. I think Triple and Trenches is where you guys fell, and you had to watch Purple Moment absolutely go nuclear. And I think, was it 1 point in the end that you ended up scratching in by?
Yeah, it was 1 point. You know, obviously that was, if that was it, was over, and there was nothing else after that for us. And we knew that, you know, we knew we needed every point that we could possibly get. We were playing the warehouse. We were playing the warehouse right on your cursor right now. And, it was actually a very reminiscent circle to the PAS2 circle that we actually won versus Sonics and LG. I think it was Sonics and LG fighting us on that spot. And so we stayed, and we're like, you know what? This game always ends on us. It was C2, C3, 50% water, and somehow this game, instead of shifting hard back, it ended more towards the compound to your northeast, not the one you're looking at, but the one on the coast. And ended up in between there, like in between gas stations. So we didn't really have much to do, because it ended up shifting out way harder than it usually does. And so we went and fought Campfire, trying to scrounge as many points as we possibly could, because we knew one of the teams that we needed to kill was also by Campfire, and we needed points, right? At that point, there was nothing else for us. We tried to send and lay prone somewhere, and it's death, and then you die. And now I remember I was sitting there, I'm fiddling with like, you know, my wristband. I'm like, I'm all nervous. You can probably see me. I probably bit all my nails off already, you know. And dude, I can't. The feeling that we had in that moment, because like we're in it. We're like, this team needs to die. This team can't get these points. You know, we can't have this happen. We're like calculating it, and then of course it goes dead silent. Everyone, it's over, right? And we like the teams win, and like, you know, if one game or one person had died differently that game, we wouldn't have qualified, right? And that's the crazy part of this map, is everyone knows the map. So these teams that were around this area, they know exactly how to handle it. But when that pressure rises, when everyone needs something, when it's do or die, you see everyone's brain come out, and the amount of people that stay alive to, like you said, fight tooth and nail to get into that, it's insane. It was wild.
If I remember right, first off, I saw you leaving your desk after that game, and you genuinely looked like you thought you guys were out. Like, I think you actually said you thought you were at the time, but that last four, you had Hoyle, who were in the mix to qualify and didn't make it. You had Ascend, who were there in the mix as well, and then you had Purple Mood, and it was just like trying to do the maths and hoping this team fights with that team, and it's just nuts. But you guys made it in the end, and I'm sure that when you finally had the confirmation that you made it through, I don't know, was it a sigh of relief, or was it just
it was an explosion of joy. I mean, it sounds weird, but like, listen, I have a Finnish teammate, I have a Czech teammate, okay? And neither of them like to show their emotions or admit that they have them. I got a hug out of both of them, okay? So that's how you know that was a great moment. That's all I got to say. So,
well, I don't know if you ever hear what I like to say about, you know, people from Finland when it comes to game, and I always say if you want to win, get a Finn, and you guys did that and managed to get some pretty good results last year. But let's get stuck into the big question that a lot of people would ask me in broadcasts, and curiosity is about callouts, right? People look at a map like Erangel. There's tons. There's hundreds of callouts on this map, and we could be talking for well over an hour on callouts alone. So what I kind of want to do is maybe focus on the big ones that a lot of people would, you know, really speak about. And I think maybe if we take the map and look at it quarter by quarter. So I think if we start up in the northwest of the map, up and around Zarki. So first off, I know that I've got this weird hybrid of EU and NA callouts, and we will have different callouts for this section of the map. But I think what we'll just do is kind of direct ourselves around here, talk about maybe really common places of interest. And the first place that I want to talk about is that kind of junction compound, the T-junction compound that has the trees lining up on the edge. We've seen a lot of games end, more so than you'd expect, Roth, around this compound in particular. So first off, what do you like to call it when you guys are playing up here? And then what are the key elements when it comes to attacking and defending this particular area?
All right. So that compound is Orange Mark. Okay, we don't have a name for that compound. It is what it is. It's also isolated. There's nothing really around it, so it's really hard to get it confused. But when you look at a compound like that, for me personally, it depends on the info you have and the way the circle is set up, right? Because if you crash into the warehouse on the east, the far east, you're kind of stuck. But at the same time, the building next to it is a very awkward building for them. They don't really have a lot of great angles. You could probably survive there and like outlive like their nades and stuff. But you have to have a well-timed push later on with smokes to the next buildings. Because if you go out the north side, the double white to the far north. No, in the same compound. You know, there's the big UFO to the next of it, or like whatever you want to call that building. Yeah. There's another double white attached to it, and they can see you. So you're probably better off like smoking off your south really hard and trying to like get into the bottom of the building if you're looking to fight them. You also have lines to just smoke across if there's no team across to your south at some point, you know. Anything really towards your west of that, you can't swing, because if you're ever crashing this compound, you're most likely crashing it from the east on these games that end, because the games usually end to the southwest of the compound. I'm sure like you've seen a lot of games that end over here in this. It's very uncommon. It does happen a couple times where it ends to like the east in that field, but it's not as likely. And if it does, you're gonna have teams lining these dips. There's a couple dips to your south, like east on the road, the intersection of right here, the corner of the road, like even on the right side of it as well, where teams will always set up and play. And so if you're fresh in this compound, you're probably usually a far east team. It's very unlikely that a Zarky team flies through from the west, because not how many people can really get to that side, you know? You'd have to go through the bridge on Georgia Paul to even get west of to the west side of Zarky. And it's unlikely. So most teams, if you ever see them crash that compound, they're going to crash that warehouse. And they're going to bunker down in the warehouse, and they're going to smoke out either south or north, depending on what they need to do, and just try to fight a line into it or across the street.
It's one of those fights where any game that I've seen finish here, when you get your top 4, there's always one team in the side of the road. You've always got one team in the center with a player around here on that little ridge line that's got that line of sight, that funnel of vision here, and feeds information here. But the big thing is, if you're in the compound, I always find that you're, depending on what way the zone shifts, you're happy because you're using a little less utility, because these two teams normally obliterate each other with, nades, mollies, everything they've got to get across that road. But it's an area of the map where we shouldn't see a lot of finishes, Roth, but we see them maybe more frequently than you would expect when you take another small area of the map in isolation. But all in all, I think you actually dropped Zarky pretty recently, right, as well? So your team's pretty well versed in this area of the map.
Yeah, I mean, we all drop Zarky when we have to. We loot Shelter Prison Mansion, so which is all the way in the southeast, or actually not southeast, but the east. So when we can't make it there, we'll head out over to Zarky, and we'll utilize that the best we can. And I mean, we don't have a lot of callouts for it because it's not very commonly. It doesn't end a lot, and it's you usually have callouts for things when they're more packed together, just to like make it more precise. Zarky's pretty open. You have a lot of open space around Zarky. Like, we don't like even that compound to the southeast under the hill, like of the compound we were talking about. So like the one, like down here southeast of that compound in the nook of the hill, you don't have any callouts for those. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, it's just a lot.
Any POIs, points of interest around this area of the map on the screen right now that you want to draw the people's attention to, whether it comes to callouts, whether it comes to how that area of the map play?
Well, I think for a lot of people that are newer, I think they will look at a place like the Plain, the right there in the middle, and they'll be like, this is an amazing spot. It's massive, this big dip where we can just control. And here's what people like, you got to understand about plains is, if the game is coming to plains, you're getting pushed from multiple different sides, and you're going to get sandwiched in plains. So you needed to draw up a plan and like make a strategy from plains on how, I can't tell you how, because every game works differently, right? Every game has different factors, different teams, different fights that go on. You either need to isolate a side and swing that side as fastly as possible and clear an edge so that you have your back safe to you, because you cannot bunker down in plains. And people will think, because of the way plains looks, that you can just sit there and bunker down. You will 100% of the time, if you just sit in plains and do nothing, you will die. And you will lose that game, because to the west of plains is a big hill that they can push up. That compound to the west of plains, the flat top. Yep. They will eventually come up. Shooting range will come up. There's a dip to your north that the north team will come up, and this compound to your east will come out at some point. And so you will just be sitting ducks in plains, and you have to figure out, is a very precise moment of when you're going to need to probably figure out how to push out, who to isolate, and who to clear, so that you have more space to you. Because plains is not, and it's a common misconception. Even I fell at hand to it a lot of times, where I just sit in plains. You cannot just sit in plains.
And it's really, it's something you'll find when you get to those plain circles too, that usually they finish around here, on the edge. It's somehow
you do get a lot there, yeah.
It normally gravitates away from plain either here or a little bit further south. We don't get very many finishes in and around that section of land at all. And I think a lot of teams are probably all the happier for it, because I always find plain to be more of a defensive position than offensive one. You don't see a lot of teams playing hyper aggressive around it. You'll have one or two players playing around this dip by the crash. You'll have a scout somewhere up around here, and depending on how early or later in the game, you will have someone extended a little bit further out to get more lines of sight. I think just for the viewers at home, I'm going to give a couple of callouts that we have at this section of the map that I would use on a broadcast. So obviously This little section is called ladle. The reason is if you were to draw a pen around it, it would look like a ladle, that you would use in the kitchen. So there's a call out for the viewers at home. And then we got spine. So you kind of got these double spines here. Do you have any specific calls that you use to differentiate between the two?
No. I believe the northeast one for us is also spine.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be wrong. I might be wrong. We have. Hold on. Let me see if I can. Let me do something for you real quick, because I think we have a list of call outs, and let me see if Pixel will send them to me real quick. And because it's not something that we commonly use this area of the map. It's more for like a lot of the other spots.
Yeah.
Call out list.
The call out list is I think going to help a lot of the esports viewers and players just for their own games. Getting an idea of making call outs for their teammates and where things could go.
It's also very different for every team. It's not very black and white. Every team is different. That's why for me, when I go to tell you, because there's an EU, I'm still trying to adjust to the EU guys. For me, I don't have a call out in North America on my teams for the South spine. I say spine or I mark the other one usually. Ladle's a pretty good one for the other one to the west there. I would sometimes call that Georgia Paul spine, if we're being honest, but just because it's closer to George. They're not commonly like. I'm a very proactive and detailed person, so I don't really stress callouts too much because I'm taking the time to draw a line and mark a spot before we do something, so it becomes how do I word it? Like, I try not to confuse my teams as much as possible. I know that's shocking to some of you. I'm very loud. Yes, I know it might be confusing, but
I think
you have the generic ones. You have Crossroads under 70.
So you've got
you have that one there in this area. You have the Crossroads there. You have Invisibles to your southwest. That's east of the Triples compound under shooting range.
Yep, that's around roughly. That's Invisibles here, right?
Yep. You have, and like for us, like you to the east of Crossroads, you have what? You have obviously it's a warehouse. We call it warehouse. Yep. But then you have to the south of that, you have Junkyard. Yep. That little compound there is a Junkyard. And then east of that is No Lean. Yep. Because there was a bug back in the day where you couldn't lean in the compound. But I mean, that's like, those are the generic ones, and anything else, any spine or anything like that, any hill is going to be relevant to the people you have on your team and what makes them most comfortable. So that does change a lot. And it's something that I think that, like, while you could learn the callouts that we have, which is really good, I think taking the time to whatever your brain processes on that team and whatever you guys are comfortable with, like look at Cat Hill, for instance, right? I know this is like Cat Hill is, some people call it llama because some people think it looks like a llama. Some people think it looks like a cat. Some people think it looks like a dog. Okay? Whoever thinks it looks like a dog doesn't have a nice looking dog. That's all I got to say.
That's me. I call it. I call it dog hill and dog food. The only reason I call it dog hill and dog food, Roth, is because if it's a llama, then this compound is droppings. So yeah, it's dog hill and dog food.
I didn't know you did that. I'm
sorry. Look, I think what we'll do is we'll speed run going through the more common callouts that people are used to hearing, right? Because I know we could talk all day about it. So we spoke about warehouse, triple, you had no lean, you've junkyard. Little bit further south of that, you've got. Cube.
Those ones are hard because you have like a cube. If anyone calls it other, like, I don't know what else people call it, but it's cube. Never mind. We're just not gonna go to the south. Like, okay, if you look over to the East Mansion area is really common. Like, I think it's really good to have callouts for Mansion. You have a lot of stuff in Mansion area, right? So you have, we call it Heaven to the west of Mansion, just because it's elevated, right? J Compound, obviously to the northeast, up and down to the east of that. That's very easy. One's up, one's down, right? To the south, you have the Yellows, because they used to be yellow. And to the south of that, we call it TJ. So an old player named Taylor J. Used to, that's just a common one. I don't know if people have changed that by now, but it's something that we just stuck with. To the west of that, you have Trophy, because it's a trophy room. And then another Junkyard, because it's a junkyard compound. To the west of that is New Compound. For anyone that wants to be well adversed in this area, it's a new compound. It was added more, it was super new, right? To the northwest is Hacker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it's called hacker. Everyone calls it hacker.
I know.
I don't know why.
So
you know. Let's
remember
go.
remember way back in the day when we had the huge hacking problem in this map where people were just aiming into the sky and killing everybody. This is where a lot of them would play. They would play in and around here in that J compound, and yeah, that's why that's called hacker. Yes, that's new compound. You brought it up. I always talk about it on a broadcast. It's been there for 5 years now or so, but it's new. This is Yaz Yellows. They've been blue for about 4 years, but they're still Yaz Yellows. You know, we stick to these things. Then you got compounds where, you know, you spoke about the Triple J compound that was named after Triple. You've got other big compounds like the Liquid compound here that are named after big moments that teams have had in the history. Yep. I want to talk about this section, right? Because I've spoken with a couple of different people, and they've got different names for here. I always call this Volcano or Vesuvius.
Yep.
And then I always
Volcano. I don't know what Vesuvius is, but I like Volcano.
So Vesuvius was the volcano that destroyed Pompeii and Herculaneum. So this was always Vesuvius, and then this was Pompeii beside it.
Bro, you saying let's crash Vesuvius mid game would have me, and I would be enchanted. I mean, I like it. I think it's cool, but like it's just too much. Like, you know, I think like it's just a lot. But it sounds it sounds cool. It does not sound the other word I was gonna say.
Yeah, and then you've got Bend. I know
Bend
that
or Snake.
Yep. A little bit to that, you've got in the EU. I know they like to call this Garden. I know a lot of people in the US would call it Valius. Yep. From, you know, another player back in the day. But, you know, let's just, you know what, let's just get it out of the way. Yeah, this compound here, this compound right here, it's dick and balls, right?
It is what it is. I mean, it is what it is.
On broadcast, I will call it plug and socket because if you've been to Europe, you'll know that in the UK and Ireland, this is what the plugs look like. But yeah, it's DMB. I think then down the line, Pansy called it package because she said this was the taint. This was called taint, so that was
okay, dude.
This is what it was called. Okay, I'm never going to say it on a broadcast, but
that's funny.
You've got
You're a better man than I am. I would say it on a broadcast.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Obviously, then you've got your mini Potch. You've got Potch a little bit further to the west. Go ahead.
We call that Profi. Just because Profi used to loot it back on Cloud9 days. So I don't know what they call it. Do you know what they call it in EU? I probably should, but
mini Potch is what a lot of people call it in EU.
So we swap ours.
Yeah. And then you look a little bit further towards the west. You've obviously got Chopsticks and Dumpling.
Yep.
Pretty common.
We actually have in NA. They call the northeast one Comet. So the Comet, like this right here. They call to the right of it. Yeah.
Yeah. This
we on our team. We call it left and right.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I would have always called this Comet and this backflip because this one looks like a Comet trail, and then it was so easy to backflip going over these on bikes back in the day.
I don't know why we call it left and right. It's very easy for us. You look at the map, one's left, one's right.
Yeah.
We're crashing left, we're crashing right. You know, it's just simple. That's just because they didn't call it Comet ever, like Page or Pixel. So, oh boy.
You've got Shrek Swamp, another one that's,
Shrek Swamp, I like that. Yeah. I've never heard that.
Again, look, you got McDonald's here just below it. I know that some people like to call this one, God
Where's
Compound.
McDonald's?
This is McDonald's because of the M.
Okay, I see it.
Yeah.
It's a stretch of an M, but I like it.
Tell me, is there any call out other than this that's not a stretch to say what it looks like?
Okay.
Yeah, no.
I mean, okay, but like,
so
yeah, I get it.
So yeah, this fair to watch. This is Ballsack. Yeah, I call it Peter Griffin's chin on broadcast because they got similar qualities.
That's funny.
That
is funny.
You've got yourself the Dirty Dozen because there's 12 buildings.
Double yellows.
Yeah,
it was.
You got Shark Compound just because or Shark Fin because it looks like Shark Fin. I think.
Yeah.
Are we missing any more of the bigger callouts for the viewers at home? I think we've pretty much tackled most of them.
I think one important one is Melted Power. I think you got to remember that Mini Power and Big Power. You have Mini Power and Big Power. Just because, if you don't know it, it's good to have them. Other than that, I mean, there's not like too many. Snake in next to Farm. Right here you have Snake. So this is Snake. and then to the west of that is Lodge.
You call it Lodge.
And-
In EU, it's called Smurf.
Yeah, we call it Lodge
Yeah.
in NA, which is, I mean, it's the right way. Put it. Sorry, I'm just kidding. But yeah, other than that, there's not too many that have been missed. I think that's for the most part, the other ones are inner. You can just, for anything else, make your own, make whatever's comfortable. Like, and when I say for anything else, forever, make your own for anything. Whatever is most comfortable that comes to your brain, whatever you're gonna remember it by, is the most important thing. In my opinion. It's not about, and it's almost like the conversation that people do with sensitivities.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they come in, they go, "What's your sense?" It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
My sense is not your sense. My sense is not what's comfortable for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest misconception that people have, is they want to, and I get why they do it. They want to try to see how they can be like Tickleton, or how they can be. You changing to Tickleton's sense doesn't make you Tickleton. Tickleton putting 75 billion hours into the game makes Tickleton. And that's the difference. And once people and people get so discouraged when they switch to the sense and they're not Tickleton. And put the time in.
And then you got people who just constantly change their sense. There's always someone out there that everyone knows. Like every day they're playing on a different sense, and it's like, but you were playing well yesterday. Why are you changing?
Pixel.
Caught him out, but yeah, I think it's, as long as you're not making callouts when you're playing like he's over there, I think it's always a pretty good one. And I think, actually,
I got made fun of yesterday.
Are you one of them? Do you go he's over there?
I do. I sometimes, well, my brain works so fast. It works so fast sometimes, and it's too fast sometimes. That's why I said I wanted to be a patient man. We were fighting on Tago or something. We're playing ranked as a team, and I said there's a forest and there was a shit ton of trees, and I said he's on the tree, and there are 95 trees. And they go, "What fucking tree, Roth?"
Oh, I love that. I do. Speaking of conversation, right? Knowing a lot of FPS games where maybe the fighting for the most part's more close quarters, they'll do a lot of call-outs where they'll say, "Oh, this player's crouching, this player's standing." Does that come into PUBG as much, or is it more so where the player is as opposed to what the player's doing?
Not as much. I mean, there are times that we'll do it. There's sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, he's crouched in this window," just so someone can pre-aim it or something, or But it's not as common, just because, like, if you think, for example, like an R6, right? We both play R6. It's much more efficient to do that in R6 because it's more of a 5v5 instant headshot type of thing, right? In PUBG, if I headshot the guy, unless I have a Dragunov, which should be gone, but unless I have a Dragunov, what does it matter, or a Bolt? It's more about what he's doing than how he's doing it in PUBG.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings us nicely on now to the final part of our little chat today, which is obviously part of this new show, like PUBG Like a Pro, where we analyze a game that you guys played recently where you won on this map in particular. So for the viewers at home, the current split that you're going for at the moment, of course, things can change. You and I both know that depending on the situation, primary drop spots can change, but you're going for the that kind of shelter, mansion, prison split right now. So first things first, you load into the lobby, you see a flight path like this. You're going to know that your drop's open. You're going to know that Sonics are going to be here. You know that STK will probably drop early, get a vehicle on the coast, make their way up towards George and go for their normal drop. You know that Luminosity will be usually around Malta, but you see a flight path like that. What's your first thought?
I mean, just to do exactly what you said. I think if it gets a little relaxed in scrims sometimes, but you should practice how you play. And you want to be watching in the back of the plane, seeing where everyone's going. In an ideal world, when it comes down to like a competition, like an actual group stage finals type of thing, you have the drop map made for you, so you know exactly where everyone's going to go. Their main drops are all drops, and your job in the plane is to be staring at the back and making sure that these teams are actually going to what they say they're going to be going to, right? So if you see a team stretch out towards Komeshki Stalber, you go, "Hey, one team Komeshki Stalber. LG dropped Milta Power. Yahoo went Yaz. Your school team went to school. Your Roz team went to Roz." Now, obviously, that's past you, right? But when you're dropping down, you can still look in your parachute. Make sure that everything is the way you think it should be. That way, because that info is very valuable. And if one thing is different, it opens up a different avenue or it poses a different threat.
So when you get the circle, then once that pops, something you and I spoke about before is a lot of the very good teams internationally will know exactly what a lot of these teams' next moves are going to be. Like, if you watch a lot of Sonics, you know that within 3-4 minutes, they're going to be out of Pachinki. They will have scouted around Potato Hill. You know, they like to extend out this way, scout it out, see what's going on. You know that Funny Business like to drop in around Smurf or Lodge or Snake. So they're usually having a little peek, like you said, to make sure that everything is as it should be. You've got Luminosity, right? You know that Legacy have dropped in Milta, and you know that you're in this split. So there's a very good chance that, these three teams could cross paths early on in the zone with a game like this. So what's your first thought once you get that split?
So initially, without giving anything away, because I'm not gonna, obviously you could probably be given away when we see what we do. But depending on the circle, and in this specific circle, I don't know why that word was so hard for me today, but go as like this pops, you want to take your prio as fast as possible. So we'll send a guy, if it's farther north, you're going to go to new compound right away. In this specific circle, we're going to go try to get a guy to one of the flats south of shelter right away. That's what we do. So you put a guy straight to a flat just because that is your prio. That is your most dominant position. Reason why, if you put a C2, can you throw a circle 2 up? And we can move it around?
Just a regular circle 2?
Yeah,
of course.
Just a regular circle 2. If you put it around and hover it around, that compound gives you a line into a lot of different circles. From that spot, you have info towards farm. From that spot, you have a line up the hill towards the dirt road, right? To the west. You can fight that. And if that circle, put that circle farther, let's put it all the way towards Sonics right now on Potato, right? If that circle does anything like this, that compound still is the backbone of your line into that circle, because you're going to fight that whole dirt road up, right? You're going to start working this whole line through. If you lose that compound, you do not have the info south for any south circle. You don't have the playability to the majority of your west circles. And you are also giving somebody else your prio. Like that. You could say farm could get it before you, but I mean, if it just depends on who's quicker. And you just want to try to control as many possible in your given circles, in your fed circles, quote unquote. You want to try to control as many avenues of success that you possibly can. So I think we end up putting guys across the street to the right as well, over here. And like you said, in regards to what your other teams around you will do, commonly known, LG is going to come look to try to pressure that. I believe they send people to look at us and try to put pressure down on us, because if they get a knock, they're going to crash it.
Yeah, so there's that split that you spoke about. Obviously, Sonics, they have moved towards Smurf compound, which is what we expected them to do. We'll get rid of this zone for now, because we want to let the viewers discover this zone as it happened on the day. But we're starting to get that curious, I want to say, phenomena that we get in PUBG, where it's like a reverse donut, where all of a sudden the edge of the circle's got tons of space. And the teams that dropped on the edge, like STK, they know that later on they're going to be able to get into these sort of areas that it's free real estate. But there's obviously risks to that too. At this moment in time, you're using IGL. You have an idea that LG are going to be here. You might be a little bit curious as to what the South American teams are going to do. You know, your EOS Guris, your Legacies, you know where they drop, you know where they're most likely to move. At this moment in time, was there anything in the game that has surprised you with any of the positions of these teams?
Not really. It's pretty commonplace. LG, once they recognize that the compound underneath them is taken, and even if they don't, they're going to play through shelter into what we call Auburn or Moon Rocks, like right above us. So basically above our compound, there's an Auburn Tree, right? And LG is going to commonly play this. Because we decided to stay isolated 2-2 in our compounds, we stayed very refined. We left the top of the Wizard Tower open for them. So them doing this makes a lot of sense, because from their hill they can scout Wizard Tower, and they're going to send it past us, and they're just taking dead center, which for them is really good. You know, obviously we were rotating, doing loot, different stuff. We were going to go up there, and they sent it at the same time as us. Now, this may look to a lot of people from that we were too slow, but we also had a fairy loot. Because we sent somebody so fast to the compound, we have to give him loot And so we're bringing loot from shelter, from other compounds to the guy. We don't have the luxury that LG had to 4-man send up there because of that scenario, right? But once we've identified that, once LG full sends it in, I know that's LG. Like, there's no other team coming off my east like that. Because Legacy's going straight in for Milton, right? There's no one north of me. So once this happens, like, you can see how we spread. And now it's time to gather as much info as you possibly can and control as many scenarios. Once LG sends, no one's probably taken that middle compound. And if they do, so what, right? The east one. I have other avenues now.
Yeah. So we'll fast forward now to that next zone shift where we'll see a little bit of change. So the zone's arriving in. You can see at this point, STK made it in. There's that phenomena that I spoke about. It's just so much free real estate at the edge of the zone. And this is where teams like STK could be, depending on this next shift, they could be rewarded. Because if this goes heavy towards the west, all of a sudden, they're going to find more traffic going their way from the other side of the zone. But the pop does come, and it does make that shift. And you know, let's look at some of the decisions teams are making straight off the bat. So STK have just arrived in the circle. They're going to see the way that shifts. So they want to take the compound that you've seen the sole player from Gas Cans going on. And this is a compound that in a zone like this, you'd say for those teams that favor the west side of the circle, if west side drops, there's going to be a little bit of contention there, right?
Yeah. No, of course. And what happens is on circles like this, because of that reverse donut that you talked about, when it hard shifts that far to the west, lots of people's brains are send. There's something free. We can get something over there. And you look how many teams are fucking sending it through the zone. Excuse my language. We would even have been one of them. But if you go back a little bit, Yahoo and LG start fighting above us. And the reason we don't full send this is because we realize there's an opportunity to gain points on our edge. And so we work them and try to finish up this fight. Because once we finish up this fight, we've now actually cleared 2 teams off of our same line. And so now we have the ability to utilize the edge of our zone because we've kind of, same reason in C1, everyone's packed together. Once you kill 2 people around you in a hard shift like that, that space in front of you is generally going to be kind of free.
And we'll watch to see, you know, you guys do take that rotate around. You keep an eye on what LG are doing. But because they were just in that fight and they lost a few players, it's not worth your time, really, is it, chasing them in towards Snake Compound, in towards that area of the map, because at this point it's all about prio for you and trying to take an area that you feel you can win the game from. And you know, I remember, look at this right here. You gotta feel bad for Safe Perez too. They gambled that it might go south, but it didn't quite go the way that they wanted. But look how they've not really been punished for this one yet either. As we get that third shift through, they actually get a really free rotate towards the Dirty Dozen.
So if you go back just a little bit. Just a kind of a tip for people that don't know, if you go back to before the circle pops, the reason why this game can't go south is because the middle of the next circle cannot be on water. So this game has to go north. It can't hard shift south, even if there's a little bit of land in or not. It cannot in casuals, it can. In casual games, it can go wherever it wants to. In competitive, the center of this next circle or any circle cannot be on water or unplayable. So it will, if you look when it shifts, even if it goes as hard south as it does, look, if you put yours right to the center, it's on the edge of that rock over there.
Yeah.
Because it has to be. And if it was south, it would be in water. So that for them is, but that doesn't mean they aren't right for doing what they're doing, because less people are over there. And as long as no one's controlling that bridge, they have a free access in, like they do right here. They come into, like you said, Dirty Dozens. And they have a free, as long as they have the info in front of us, like this side of the map has been free for a long time. The center of the map on C1 was over by shelter. So these are 3 hard shifts to the west. This gives them a lot of space and a lot of freedom to do what they need to do on the southwest, because generally, unless people have full scent through the circle, no one's going to be there as long as they've controlled their space and have their info.
So I want to talk about this next move that you make, right? So Tiltown are playing a bit of a 3-1 split. They have got a scout on the north side of the zone playing inside of the, you know, the Pachinki bunkers that are up around that area of the map. At this point, you can see you guys are moving. You've obviously done a little bit of scouting here on the section of the map. Have you spotted Savage moving here, or are you making this move expecting that you're going to come into some fight at this northern section of the zone?
So when we're coming down this way, like before we scout, our ideas that someone should be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once I stop, and I think this is very important for people, is to take your time. If time is allotted to you, use the time. Use the time and try to find a way to use it wisely. Information is king in anything, right? And I stop up here and I look. I think I'm the southmost guy. I remember this game pretty vividly. Like I'm like, we're gonna go for this bunker because we know this game has to hard shift north. It has to come off the water and go as hard north as it possibly can, or hard west, or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped to see if this bunker is free because that bunker gives you an avenue and a fight line into the rest of the game, and nobody's there. Now, if there was someone there, we're probably going for that fight anyways, just because, you know, at this point, your game is in the scenario of you're either taking what's given to you or you're fighting for points.
Mm-hmm.
He comes back to it as we go, and we're like, just, you know, we're just going to hit this guy. There's nothing. We only see one guy. It's 4 versus 1. And now that you've killed this guy, and we saw that he came back from Cloud 9, now you know the team in front of you is also weak. One of the teams in front of you. You have to assume that there's a team in the APL dips over here to the west, you know, playing where APL is. Yeah, because it's a very commonly thing, like played spot. LG plays it a lot, where they play across the road from each other. Usually they do it earlier on in games that are more towards Gaka, but someone's always going to play the spot. It's a very good spot. So when we come here, you just have to reset and like look around you and go, what's our next avenue? What's our next fight line? But also be patient because the circle's coming back to you.
Mm-hmm. So at this moment in time, you're obviously keeping an eye on the kill feed. You're trying to work out where, you know, where everyone is. So you're probably pretty certain that Sonics are there, right? You have an idea that they're the team that's most likely on your left or your east or your east at this moment in time.
Yeah, Sonics is going to be the Lodge team. They're off of the way the game has transpired earlier. If as long as they haven't done anything out of the abnormal, they're somewhere over there towards Lodge or Cloud 9. If, you know, depending on what they have. Also, kill feed throughout the game is super important. You know, you can only see kills or knocks within 1,000 meters. So if you're only seeing kills, you can kind of use that to gauge where someone might be. Sonics is a team that's very proactive. They shoot their guns a lot. I'm pretty sure in this game, if I remember correctly, like we knew that Sonics was to our east just because of the way, you know, the knocks were playing out.
So the next shift that comes through, and it doesn't really, you know, as you said, it doesn't really move too far away from the position that you're on because it can't really do so. You guys elect then to go clear that hill. So you've spoken about it. You know that there's a very good chance that there's someone there. Did you spot one of these two players? Obviously, with the kill feed, you're going to know that it's Apollo playing that position. At this moment, do you take this fight because you need to clear your west if you want to focus towards the center of the zone?
Yeah, and we have to. At this point, we've realized that we can't play direct up because, you know, you're gonna have Tilt Town, you're gonna have Sonic, you're APL. You can't play direct up, right? So in this moment, if I remember correctly, and I'm sure somebody will make fun of me if I didn't, but we were looking to team shot someone to the west. APL made the mistake of showing their guy. If you go back a little bit, the guy that was all the way on the north towards Pachinki, he showed himself. So we saw him there. If he stays down and we didn't know he's there, this becomes much harder for us, right? But we ended up getting a knock, if I'm not mistaken, towards one of APL, towards the south guys. And so this allowed us to just say, you know what, we're just going to go for this. Cowboy made a good call in this game off of what we were already discussing. He was leading this fight really, really well. And, you know, he's one of the guys we've been trying out, and, you know, we really like him. And he was taking front on this. He knew exactly how it should, because, you know, you can have an IGL, but it doesn't stop other people on the team from when they see something, because, you know, it's 4 different angles, 4 different visions, right? And I'm a very firm believer that, like, you know, obviously the IGL has the ability to call people back, say, hey, no, we're not going to do that. But you also have to be able to, like, when somebody on your team is very confident, when they see something, when you can tell that in their voice that you got to let them lead it. You can't try to be a dictator. You can't do that. It's never going to work. And I think from a team dynamic, when you see this play unfold, it's because he takes that front and he goes, hey, I see this right now. Like, follow me this way. And we were playing with subs in this game. I think we're playing with Fade Away and Empty. And he's taking, and he's like, Fade, come do this. Empty, come do that. And I'm just like, this is free for me. I'm going to lurk on the edge over here and just, like, control our space, you know? And that's just the way it's got to be sometimes, you know? We have to take this fight in this moment because you have to get out of the bunker, and you can't go direct, because if you go direct, you're going to sandwich yourself. So you have to find a way to clear your edge. And sometimes the best way to do that is, like, utilizing your vehicles. You get a knock, hop in your vehicles, bum rush the next guy closest to you and just make it a 2v4.
So this is where we talk about the SSG style again, and I always say that you guys are one of the better edge teams. I like to say that Sonics like to play that style as well. So now that you've cleared Apollo, how important for you is it as an edge team to get those teams that are around you gone so you can focus directly in towards the zone then? Because the Tilt Town are here. You don't even have to read the kill feed. This compound is going to have players in it.
Yeah.
You're probably not overly aware of S4R just yet. You probably spot them a little later, but realistically, there's like a little square that you're focused on, right? And that's towards Tilt Town and south, and there's this area. You know that the north should be relatively clear because you've just come from there.
Yeah.
You know that you've cleared Apollo from here, so this section should be clear. As an edge team, how much does clearing that zone then enable you to try to get the win? Because look, if you look, Sonics want to do the exact same on the opposite side of the circle, but their problem is Legacy are still in this area of the map as well.
Yep. So at this point, now you're going to set up, you got to allocate resources, right? So you got to identify your threats. For us, it's very easy for me to sit here with 1 or 2 and hold our south. We even have a third floater just to make sure S4R sees us. We don't want them to wrap us off the fight. We didn't get any knocks. None of us got knocked. So it's unlikely that a team is going to full send into you because there's no advantage for them, right? But you gotta show strength in numbers. So if you peak them with 3 and you're looking at S4R with 3, they're more likely to try to do something else because they don't want to drive in a car at 3 guys already holding them with a gun. That's not really advantageous for them, right? Meanwhile, still controlling your space, playing the edge like this, you need to put somebody back. And I don't know if it's Cowboy up there on the north. It's someone who is already running off and making sure that they're controlling space to the north so that Tilt Town doesn't run over the top on us and try to fight us when we fought, It just needs to be controlled. You want to make sure that you reset after a fight and control your space and be patient. Like, you can live in a sliver of the zone. The circle can go anywhere. And right now it's like, even if you're just in 1% of the zone, but waiting for the next zone to pop, maybe SDK has to move before you. Maybe BP has to make a move. And now that's creating a fight that now because BP moves or whatever, like, that's just the idea for this circle. It's just control the space in this specific moment, wait to see what the next pop is, because somebody else is going to probably have to do something before you and open up an opportunity.
So at this point now, you're in the area of the map where you hear almost everything, right? You're going to hear Sonic's driving, you're going to hear S4R. Safe for Res have just crashed onto STK and cleared that out. Does the speed at which that gunfight ends have an impact on your decision making at this point here? Like, if this is a more long engaged fight, do you get involved quicker if there's traded reses, or are you kind of just having a little read of your options at this moment? No, because ideally in this scenario with this circle specifically the way it is, the hill wins the game for the most part, unless it does some crazy hard shifts to the southwest, which it does. The hill is your strength. You want to control the hill as long as you can until you have to do something. We also knew that the wizard tower was free, and we do take it later, because you want to try to control the hill as long as you can, and then you want to come swing in when you need to. When this circle pops, now it's time. Okay, now if you look at the way the circle's set up, right? Because like we said, if it hard shifts, that's the only reason the hill is not better than this compound, right? It hard shifts. S4R is weak. We know they're weak. We know they killed SDK. I'm scouting in. I see that the mansion is generally free. The guy ends up moving to it, and I'm able to hold them in for a second and then take the wizard tower while they're hitting it. And it's also a matter of trust. We don't need to allocate all 4 guys to 2 man of S4R. I think they were 2. They might have been 3, but it's hard to tell on this. Because right now you want to control the wizard tower, because the wizard tower controls everything to the east and also keeps a team. Like, if we don't get the Wizzy, and the game goes north again or northeast, the team that does take the wizard tower controls us out of the compound. So it's just a matter of, like you said, identifying they fought, not rushing. You don't want to rush because the compound, the previous circle, might not have been good for the next. If the circle bounces northeast towards Sonics and Tilt Town, what the compound doesn't do anything for you. You need to control the hill, right? Yeah. So in the next few moments, Sonics, they've rotated. They're going to crash the other side of this compound that's being held by S4R. Tilt Town, if you look, they're content to play on the hill. They're doing what I think is their only option, and that's just to wait and see what happens. Let the rest of the lobby deal with it. You've already lost a player to you a little bit earlier, so you know there's still a 3 above you. You know that Sonics is the team that's crashing here. So at this moment, you're saying to yourself, Tiltown, you've not seen them in the kill feed in a while. You know that they're still probably up around here. So at this moment, you're really a conduit of information, right? You're having a look around here and you're feeding information to your two players who are inside these twins. And they're going to feed the information about the Sonics crash that's just about to happen as well.
So while they're occupied with S4R and Sonics, like I'm just, like you said, information gathering, right? Tiltown hasn't done a lot in a while, but I've seen them. I know they're there. They've peaked, right? So we know Tiltown exists. I knew that I think it was Kickstart over in Barnes. He had just died. I knew he existed, right? So I'm trying to figure out where everyone is, what the numbers are, and I'm also preparing a crash because Tiltown's next play is probably to crash me. They don't have a lot to their east, right? So I'm preparing like the way I want to, like, without overcrowding my team, because my team's priority has to kind of be to look towards Sonics and S4R. And if something unfolds like a Tiltown crash, we can allocate a couple people to come support me while one guy still makes sure he holds the south. You cannot lose focus of those guys in the south. And that's what happens. Tiltown crashes me. I knock. There's one knocked, and then I knock another guy, and then I get knocked to one. And Cowboy and I think Fadeaway are able to come and sweep him. And they end up just taking this last guy out.
So at this,
so now, okay.
I was gonna say at this point, how important was it to leave that anchor player inside the compound as well? So as you can see, you get knocked. Two players push up to support you. How important was? Let me just check to see who that was at the time. How important was Empt's position? How important was it for him to stay where he is?
Well, it's super important. I think that, like, you know, obviously I think they're two solos, S4R and Sonics. I can't really tell, sorry, because it's a Twire, but if they're two solos, you know, they have to kind of take care of each other first before they come to us. But if, God forbid, we come as 4 and push Tiltown and then, like, get 2 knocked to Tiltown, right? And we didn't leave that anchor behind, and say the Sonics player killed S4R, and now he has the Prio building, which is the one to the right of Empty. Say he gets that building. Who knows what he does to us in the back? So you always want to leave that reassurance. You want to have the insurance, right? And make sure that no matter what happens, like, somebody is controlling your game. You don't need 4 guys to go clear 1 guy. You shouldn't. And you got to trust your players enough that 2 guys can 2v1 a guy, you know? And if something goes wrong there, it goes wrong. But the game is all about trust. And that's why you have to be willing to leave people back and not over-evaluate a scenario and rush to be like, hey, we need to send everybody north. No, we don't. Control the game. Like, be patient, control the game, like, lock down your win by just trusting your teammates and making sure that no matter what happens, like, you can't get stabbed in the back.
Yeah, and then, look, you know it's a solo. You know it's safe for Rez. I'm going to ask the question, right? And this is one that I think maybe myself as a caster, even viewers, have. So, Empt, Cowboy, and Fade just full send it into that last player then. If that was, say, for example, a Sparking or a Gizera, do you change the way you approach this? Or was it a case where this is how you're going to attack every player? Like, does the player that's alive... but does the player that's alive impact how you push a fight?
Yeah, not in scrims. I don't think even in a competitive scenario we would have full sent at that guy, right? I think in a scrim scenario, I think you're like, just go kill that guy. He's a solo, right? Like, go have some fun, run at him, whatever happens, you know, go laugh and kill the guy. Because I trust that 3 of them are going to kill the solo. If it was a competitive game, if it was a PAS final or something like that, control your space, peek them together. Make sure because eventually he's forced out of the zone. He's either gonna, if you really need the points, right? Like, if it's imperative, like, oh, that 1 point matters, probably go kill him, right? Because, like, obviously you don't want him to deny and give up the point, right? If it's like, if you need it towards the end. But take your time, think it through, control the space, make sure that guy has to leave at some point. You have more of the zone than he does, right? And you can take advantage of that. But in a scrim setting, like, it doesn't hurt to have some fun, run at the guy, giggle a little bit. You know, it doesn't matter who it is. If it's Sparking and Sparking 1v3s you, you guys, we were laughing, we suck. Yeah. You know, but it would never happen in a real game because you're not going to give them that opportunity.
No, well, look, Roth, that was a lot of fun to have that talk with you today because, again, I think it educates players. It's good for me as a caster, too, to get to understand the way you think about the game a lot more. So, as we get ready to close up, first off, I hope that you join us again soon to do another scrim breakdown or even official breakdown if we get the time to sit down and do it. Obviously, for the viewers, we're going to make sure that it's a map that you guys win. You know, we're never gonna make you talk us through a game where things went wrong. Although that would be interesting content too, to kind of get behind the mindset of, well, this is what you thought was going on and this is what actually happened.
I'm not opposed.
Yeah.
PUBG is more failures than successes a lot. So I think it is also, if you ever want to sit down and just discuss some of the games that go terribly wrong, I don't think that's a bad thing either. I think that's something that a lot of new people need to understand, that it's okay. It's a very hard game.
Yeah, well, look, we could definitely do that, especially when, obviously, we're not going to do it when you're in the heat of a competition, but I think it'd be nice to have that conversation from time to time. So as we wrap up, is there anything you want to say to budding PUBG esports players, to SSG fans, or just to viewers in general, as we have PAS around the corner?
No, just thank you guys for your support. Thank you for doing these. I love doing these with you. It's always a blast. But to the fans and our families that support us and have our backs, like, you know, like I talked about earlier with my wife, it's I can't thank you guys enough. We can't thank you guys enough. And you know, we're hoping to build, not hoping, we know we're going to build off the success of PAS2, and you know, we'll be stronger this year. We'll be better this year. And if we're not, you can blame me. And I'll take responsibility, but there's no chance for not. So appreciate you guys. Thank you, and stay safe.
Well, thank you so much, Roth. Have a great evening. Enjoy your upcoming weekend, and best of luck in the upcoming PAS as well. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks.